I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And JT is in a different spot. He wanted to get far away from us today.
It's true.
Yeah.
Away from striking distance.
Yes. From exile distance.
From exile distance?
Yeah. I can't push you out of the frame now. But
that's funny.
But yes, we are here with a Ghostmail. Ooh. You got Ghostmail.
Oh, yeah.
Or Chris does it better, but...
Yeah.
We've got Ghostmail.
There you go.
Very nice. Very nice.
But yes, thank you guys for sending in your Ghostmail. But we do have a few announcements before we get into things. JT, you want to kick us off?
Yes, we do have some freaking announcements, and they are exciting. We've got so much going on, y'all. All right, first things first, we are announcing that we are working on currently production on a radio play. And it is called Beneath the Cobblestone, and it features your two favorite podcasters. We have Maeve over to the right and Dr. Pendleton over to the left, and they slay demons. Madison, what is the radio play?
So it is about a few different characters. We have kind of created our own character world of sorts. So I play Maeve, which is the apprentice, if you will, of Dr. Pendleton and Dr. Goust. And we are a team of demon slayers, and we go around Savannah slaying all the demons of town. Everything is based off of Savannah's folklore and our history and things like that, but turned into a more fictional world. So the first episode is very, very fun. And to give you a little hint, it might have something to do with the Gribble House story.
Boom.
Ooh.
But it is all about demon slaying. Absolutely. And so we're building a world, and it's going to be really, 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 really cool. We are going to release the pilot episode on Patreon. I'm hoping by very early June. So probably by the time you're hearing this, it's getting ready for release. But we had a bunch of actors come in and play characters, and it's just something where you're going to be able to close your eyes and imagine everything that is said to you. It's going to be really, really cool. It's going to be a horror series, completely fiction, based on Savannah. So if you love Savannah's horror, become a Parajunkie. You have to check that out because it's going to be lit. And yeah, so that's the first thing. And
that's just the first.
Oh, yeah.
There's more.
There's more. So, Madison, do you want to tell them about Washington, Georgia?
Yes. Us devils are going down to Georgia,
Woo.
and we are going to Washington, Georgia in particular.
So where are we now? We're not in Georgia?
No, it's all
I have
facade.
not been paying attention.
It's a facade. No, we're going to a different part of Georgia, to Washington, Georgia in particular, which is a cute little small town in between Athens and Augusta. They have contacted us to come out to their haunted little town. I was going to say creepy town, but we'll figure that out. That'll be up for us to decide.
It's actually quite cute.
It is. It's really cute. But we're going to go out there and do some investigating. We're going to do a whole episode on Washington, Georgia, and we're going to be finding out any ghosts that might be lurking in that town. So
yeah, it
should be a lot of fun.
It's really cool. They've been super sweet to us, and they're just a bunch of great people there that are really excited to have us. You know, it's pretty cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and thank the new Parajunkies. So Carilli Johnson, Sophia Sandoval, Miss Sarah, Monique Kiltkoff, and Joe Hargroves. Thank y'all so much for becoming Parajunkies, and we won't let you down. All right. Here we go. All right. We have another announcement.
What?
Visit Savannah.
Yes.
Yes. This is actually a really big one, y'all. So Madison and Chris are about to get their own show partnered with Visit Savannah, and I'll be shooting it. Debria and I will actually be shooting it, and it's going to be really, really cool. That actually is going to be public, but become a Parajunkie to get updates and behind the scenes stuff and whatnot. But it's all going to be uploaded on Visit Savannah's stuff. So give them a follow. All their TikTok and Facebook, and our pilot episode. We're actually working with Pat Gunn, everybody's favorite, to do an episode on the Gullah Geechee culture. It's going to be called Haint Hags and the Gullah Geechee Culture. So it's going to be very, 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 very cool. So that shoots mid to late June. So yeah, very, very busy. And why is it so good to be a Parajunkie? Lastly, before we started off, 0 ads, live stream almost every week, and exclusive content. You can't beat that with a stick.
On top of all the other stuff that we just mentioned. Yeah, definitely give it a consider. And join us over on the Patreon.
Yes, but let's go ahead and jump into some ghost mail.
Ghost mail.
Ghost mail, ghost mail, ghost mail. All right, the first story is from Julie Collins, eerie ghost story in the outskirts of Savannah.
Ooh,
right.
outskirts.
I like it. When I was 16, my friend Destiny and I had a spooky experience that still sends shivers down my spine. We were playing Monopoly at her kitchen table located in Bloomingdale, Georgia. Both with a view of the opening to the kitchen, when we froze and stared at the opening in disbelief. Destiny asked if I saw the little boy, and to my surprise, I had seen him too. A young boy with blonde hair wearing overalls standing in the doorway.
It was me.
It was you.
I'm usually seen as the little blonde boy in overalls as well. So
we were both shaken by what we had witnessed and become obsessed with finding out more about the little boy. We went as far as to get a
Ouija board.
Yes. Ouija board to communicate with him. When we asked for his name, the board spelled out ADA. We were unsure if the board was a bad speller, so we suggested other names, but the board grew frustrated and repeatedly spelled out Ada. Maybe initials? About a month later, Destiny and I went to the Pizza Inn in Garden City with our boyfriends after a high school football game. We were seated in a booth adorned with old-timey objects and pictures on the walls. I noticed a picture of a family, old in black and white, hung on the wall beside us. At first glance, the family seemed familiar, but it wasn't until I looked back at the picture that I recognized the little boy. It was the same boy we had seen standing in Destiny's doorway. He had the same blonde haircut and facial features. As I looked closer at the picture, I noticed the family name was printed below it. To my amazement, it was the same name the Ouija board had spelled out. Brian, Margaret, Elizabeth, and Son, Ada. Destiny and I were in shock. To this day, we cannot explain the eerie experience that we had with the little boy. But seeing this picture in the Pizza Hut made us believe that he was more than just a figment of our imagination. Thanks, Julie.
goodness. That's a great story.
Regularly, you do not get closure. You do not get that little punch, that little button at the end. Very nice. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, so if you're out in Bloomingdale, Georgia, that's mostly farmland and things like that. For those of you who are not from Savannah, so my bet is that it was probably a farming family or somebody who was a part of that community and things like that. Because, usually in small country towns, it's not abnormal to see photos of the families, who live in the area and things like that. So it is really cool that you got to see that exact experience. But my bet is that Destiny's house might have been built on their old farmland or things like that, and he might still just be hanging around, especially if he died as a child. And never
discount being followed home.
That is true.
You could have gone to someplace important to them. They catch sight of you, and some people just shine. They just glow in such a way that spirits just feel drawn to them and will follow them. Especially the classic stories of spirits that are just kind of milling about. They don't really have a purpose. They're not really haunting a place in the sense of unfinished business or they have anything. They're just existing. And then along comes this shining light, and they're like, I will follow that light, and they attach themselves.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the little boy haunted the Pizza Hut.
Very, very, very possible.
And if you guys visit the Pizza Hut often, they're like, ooh, I like them. Let me follow them home with their carryout. So,
and a lot of people get into their minds that it's the idea that he might have died as a child, that the child died. But in fact, a lot of times people may die very old, but when they come back in their spirit form, they are younger, sometimes spread out amongst multiple places, childhood, fascination places, things like that. Just being able to represent the person at different stages in different places based on their emotional input.
That is very true.
Cool. All right, those small town ghosts, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
I love it.
All right, here we go.
Also, please never do the Ouija board again, Julie. Please never do that. For those who are listening, Chris and I do not condone the Ouija board as the method of confirmation.
Fans of the Ouija board.
All right. Let's jump into the next one. Thank you, Julie. Okay. Oh, also, we had Ashley Werner wanted to tell you I'm so excited for this. I already know it's going to be awesome.
Yay.
Yes.
We can always
love the live stream comments. Okay. This one comes from Lainey Hart. Lainey's my sister's name.
That's a cute name.
Yeah, I like that name. It's called The Witch in the Wardrobe.
Ooh.
All right. Heard that. Heard that. Hi, guys. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, listening from Tampa. Thank you for listening. Yay. Thank you for being a fan. We appreciate it. I've had a strong interest in the paranormal ever since I can remember, and definitely feel as though I'm somewhat sensitive. I also have had a severe history of sleep paralysis. My mom has always been a collector of antiques, and at one point she acquired this Edwardian-era armoire prior to me being born. It was a tall, rectangular wooden cabinet with a single mirror door in the center and carvings of what looked like 3 strands of wheat tied together on either side of the mirror. When I was in middle school, my mom remodeled our home, and the armoire got moved to my bedroom, which I remember feeling less than excited about for several reasons. But as there was no other spot in the house for it, I accepted its fate. I used it to store random things I didn't always need immediate access to: yearbooks, excess school and art supplies, costume jewelry, and old CDs. This was about the year 2006-2007. I remember it always having this coldness to it, but I always chalked this up to it being wood, since wood is a good insulator. My room was notoriously hot, however. It was the hottest room in the house in the summer and the coldest in the winter, and it had 3 exterior walls and was the last room at the end of the hall, the furthest away from the AC unit, which serviced that side of the home. In the summers, my room would get up to 80 degrees and the cabinet would still be cold around it, and definitely inside of it. Interesting. Now, having given more thought to it, this should have been my first sign of what was to come. Oh, yeah. The sleep paralysis started as soon as the armoire took up new residence in my room. I racked my young brain up and down, trying to understand what was happening when I closed my eyes, until I saw a TV show about incubuses and succubuses. And then I thought, well, that's got to be it.
Aha, we've nailed it down now.
Furthermore, I started to get extremely scared just to go to sleep. When it would hit, I would always start saying the Lord's Prayer, and that would help wake me out of it. But sometimes I would have to say the prayer multiple times to actually wake up. I can't remember the exact turning point, but at some time I connected the sleep paralysis with the mirror door on the armoire being opened or not shut all the way. I wake up out of the sleep paralysis, realize the door was open or ajar, get up and close it, and then go back to sleep. And so making sure the door was properly closed before going to sleep became a required part of my nighttime routine. Sometimes, however, I'd wake up from a paralysis knowing I had closed the door and it would mysteriously be ajar again. I would force myself to think happy thoughts instead of wondering why the door was open because I felt there was nothing I could do. No one would believe me, and I wouldn't ever be able to move this strange piece of furniture out of my room. With that being said, closing the door made me feel like I had an upper hand with the sleep paralysis. In other words, I thought I had it under control. Thank you for writing. I just have to take it right. Like this is a wonderfully written email. All right. When I was 17 or 18, we remodeled my room again and moved the armoire to a different spot, but still in my room. My mom gifted me an antique mirror, which got placed on a wall that directly faced the armoire cabinet.
Maybe your mom needs to stop giving you things. Yeah.
I know now that placing two mirrors facing each other is a big no-no.
It's a fat no-no.
But back then I didn't.
Also, sleeping opposite a mirror is kind of a no-no.
Yeah, fat no-no as well.
Wow, okay. After moving the armoire and adding the new mirror, the sleep paralysis picked back up, and more often than not, I would find the door to the armoire ajar after knowingly closing it. Like I closed it for sure, but somehow it would wind up open. The sleep paralysis got worse than ever. And when I would sleep, I would have terrible, frightening, and vivid dreams. Once I was laying in a bed after a sleep paralysis episode and heard a loud and distinct sneeze that sounded like it was right outside my room. My parents' house sits on the river, so people could have easily entered our backyard from the dock, which happened every once in a while, but during the day, there was no one. I waited to see if a crabbing boat came by, as sound can travel on water, but it never did either. When I told my parents the next morning, they thought I was crazy. The summer after I graduated, I woke up one morning after an absolutely chilling dream that felt so real, like it was happening in real time. We had a dog named JD who would sleep with me in my room. JD could open the bedroom door, but obviously he couldn't close it. And since the door only opened inward into the room, if he wanted out in the middle of the night, he would scratch the door until I woke up and let him out. In the dream or series of dreams, it was like I was watching from the trees. And in my backyard, two older men were murdering this girl. I can still picture their faces. Goodness gracious. It was so frightening that I thought it had woken me up, but it had actually just woken me into another dream where my dog was scratching at the door to be let out. It was especially strange that I didn't recognize in the dreams that the light was on every time I woke up. I can't sleep with any lights on, and I'm still aware enough when I am dreaming to notice little things like this and realize I'm dreaming. I must have woken up from this same sequence of dreams 3 or 4 times, sometimes into a sleep paralysis when the last time I went to let my dog out the door and the two men from the outside were looking back at me with creepy grins. They were in my house. I know this is hard to interpret or make sense of, but this dream actually frightened me so much it still does to this day. I hate talking about it. I decided at some point not to go back to sleep and turned on my TV for background noises. So, sorry if I sped through that explanation. There's actually a lot more to the particular night's worth of dreams I just can't bear to revisit. When I actually got up to start the day, my brother and I both exited our rooms at the same time, and the first thing I said was, "You would not believe the dream I had last night." We went out to the back porch to let the dogs out and I started to explain the dream. His face deserted its tan complexion and took on a milky undertone. He said, "Lainey, I had the exact same dream." He immediately wanted to stop talking about it and forget the whole experience. My dog, JD, passed very unexpectedly just a few weeks after all of this from a tumor on his trachea, which had seemingly appeared overnight. I don't remember who or what it was that I found out. I don't remember who or when it was that I found out about the two mirrors facing each other, but I do know that once I heard that, I was quick to cover the mirror on the armoire at night after that. I would take a large blanket, drape it over the door, and shut the blanket inside the door crease. And until I moved out of that house, that is how I had to sleep. I left the armoire, of course, when I moved out, even though my mom insisted that I take it. Since then, I haven't had even one episode of sleep paralysis, and it's just so weird to me that it only happened to me in that particular time and environment. I remember once my family took a trip to Savannah, and my brother swears he was visited by a hag, a hilarious story for another time. But part of me really believes now that a hag lives in that armoire, and so I have affectionately titled her the Witch in the Wardrobe. I still have so many questions, but recently this experience has inspired me to maybe write a fiction book, and so I am wondering what your thoughts on this are. Very sincerely, Lainey.
Absolutely write a book, Lainey,
Yeah.
because you're very good at writing. Also, thank you for that, because the way you described your house, because if y'all didn't know, I'm also from Tampa. Your house sounds exactly like mine. My house was also on the water and was laid out very similarly. And I also had an armoire that looked a lot like yours. So now all I can picture is that. So whenever I go to see my parents next time, I'm going to be thinking of your story. But
A different kind of haunting.
a very different kind of haunting. But that is insane. I'm still trying to process the dream portion in my head because it sounds like you had some type of entity for sure attached to the armoire, but I think the dreams might have been unrelated to the armoire at first until that second mirror came in.
There's also the concept that when you come into contact with something paranormal, supernatural, something that that kind of pokes a hole in the veil and the reality that we live, you are susceptible to receiving all forms of information. And the thing that stands out about your dream is that you kept waking up in your dream, which is very much a part of a way that your brain is trying to ensure that you get information.
Right.
Because when you wake up in your dream, you are basically resetting your knowledge of a place. And that means that you are subconsciously trying to validate what you've seen while staying asleep. That suggests that there was an urgent message. That suggests that there was something that was being told, and it didn't want you to wake up out of the dream because then the message could not continue. So when you were being scared or something in your dream was on the verge of waking you up, rather than letting you become conscious, it just shifted into another dream, knowing that it can continue the narrative, continue trying to tell you something, which I don't think is necessarily connected to the chifforobe, the armoire. Every time I think of an armoire, I think of the word chifforobe because I like the word chifforobe.
That's a fun word.
Chifforobe. But it may not be connected to the entity of the armoire, but the presence of the armoire is kind of like an antenna that is now giving you the ability to pick up on other messages, on other things. So, yeah, in the presence of supernatural things, you might become psychically gifted for a short period of time or in the proximity of it, because the fact that you said that it gets cool or that it's cold inside, that it's cooler inside, that suggests that it is using energy. It is drawing in the heat around it for a reason. And I'd be interested to note that if while you're sleeping, it doesn't heat back up, if it's
Sure.
not burning the energy that it's storing during the day.
Interesting.
So yeah, there's a lot of wonderful things, and I'd love to hear the other stories. And
I would
certainly
also love to hear that.
your brother and the hag sounds like a great story. And you should absolutely write this down.
Yeah.
That was a very well written letter. Milky tones under the tan complexion. That's very, very lovely imagery. So I would say, write. Absolutely. People love ghost stories, and people love hearing stories about ghosts. That is kind of our trade. So
Yeah. It would be a good graphic novel, too.
It'd be a good graphic novel too, or
Yeah.
short film even. So reach out to your artist friends to collaborate on telling the story, because stories like this help other people who have isolated and strange occurrences feel emboldened to speak, or at least because the common sensation is people will think I'm crazy. I don't tell people this because they'll think I'm crazy. And then along comes a platform, much like this podcast, that says, you're not crazy. This is happening. We cannot authoritatively say what it is, but we can say that your experiences are valid. And it's amazing when people come forward and tell stories that normally they would keep to themselves for
Right.
fear of being judged. This is a no judgment zone. So
No judgment.
Some of the best stories that we get, or even I get, especially doing ghost tours and stuff, is people coming up to me and being like, yeah, I had this one experience, but I don't know really what to make of it. And then they spell out this insane tale of just crazy nonsense going on around them. And you just didn't want to tell anybody about that, but
well, my favorite ghost stories usually start with, I don't believe in ghosts.
oh, yes.
But
This one thing happened.
it's like, I don't believe in that. However, because basically those people are resistant to a story, but there comes this thing that they can't explain away or they can't figure out, and it just sticks out in their mind, and it becomes a very because they're paying close attention simply because their entire persona is, I don't believe in ghosts, but I think that was a ghost.
Right. Absolutely.
So how would a hag or a witch inhabit a piece of furniture? Like, if we had to guess how it works, how would it work?
Even more closely is the armoire.
Okay.
So an armoire is a piece of furniture with a door.
Yeah.
Doors symbolically are entrances and exits. So anything with a door can be bound, especially through concentration, through anything, to suggest entrance and exit. You put a mirror on that door, and you've got now a magnifying glass on an entrance and an exit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you have a lot of different ways to go about the suggestion of how did this become the place. Armoires are perfect for hiding in. Mm-hmm. So you could conceivably have people who would hide from the world inside, a closed space. So there's a lot of different ways that objects become conveyances for the supernatural. An armoire with a mirror on it does have a lot of even like the apothecary-like setting. That's a perfect place to hide small altars if you're to practice or dabble in any form of ritualistic magic.
Especially because it was Edwardian too.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
perfect
Yeah.
timing for
Absolutely.
it. So
And you described wheat being bound, which binding, the word binding it comes up again and again in any kind of ritualistic belief system, is because binding is how magic is done. Even the word Wicca, it kind of derives from the same place that we get wicker. It comes from this idea of weaving and binding and tying things together. That is the nature. And I always say that like knots are the earliest form of magic. People tying knots.
Oh yeah, not magic is so interesting if you've never looked into it.
Yeah, it's not magic though.
It's a fascinating thing because it is something recognizable that looks really easy when you take, I've taken this thing, I've bound these things together, now they're together in a single thing, And we're like, well, that's not magic. It's like, well, it kind of is.
But it is not magic.
It was a function of the binding of things, and really, that's one of the core principles of magic is you're binding yourself to something, or you're binding two objects together, or two identities, or two entities. So yeah, I think that you should take pictures of this armoire and send it to us.
Yes, that's what I was about to ask.
I mean, you see, there's always been like this imagery of things hiding in your closet, hiding in armoires, and I think it's because they're kind of like their own separate rooms, and it's easy to imagine that they're entryways to a different world.
Wasn't there an armoire in the movie The Conjuring?
Yes, that was
and
the one
witch
that
was on
Bathsheba
the top of it. Bathsheba was like on top of the armoire, and you're like, oh yeah. So when you said the witch in the wardrobe, that's the first image I got.
Same.
Was this woman on top of the armoire going, ah?
Yes, and to preface too, because we've said witch a lot. We don't mean like actual witchcraft. It's been kind of just like a word used as a catch-all, kind of like a demon.
Well, hag. People always imagine that a hag, because we've associated the word hag so intently on the sea hag, or the the old woman hag, the concept of the crone and the hag. But the hag is in fact a demonic presence, a demonic force in this region at least, and it does not adhere to the idea of old woman or witch.
But kind of a catch-all term.
Just a catch-all term.
Yeah.
And that's true too of whenever we use the words demons or anything like that, we are not associating specifically to a criteria, like we're not speaking specifically of the Christian demon construct or any culture's demonic construct. We're using it as a catch-all phrase for malevolent force.
Dope. All right, here we go. On to the next one. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Let's see. We got sent in one. It is called Paranormal Encounter.
Perfect. Straight to the point.
I know, right? Perfect for the show. Hello, everyone. For privacy reasons, I will not be using my real name. Understood. Growing up, my family was not wealthy by any means. This means that my younger brother and my younger sister shared a room and a queen-sized bed. I would always sleep about 1 foot from the closet, and the door to the room was around 3-ish feet from where I was sleeping. I was in around the 5th or 6th grade at this time and had pretty strange sleeping habits. I would go to sleep at around 9 o'clock and wake up periodically through the night until around 6 in the morning. It was the only way I could sleep. For some reason, my little body thought it was safer to sleep when someone else was awake. I don't exactly remember when it started, but one night I was woken up by someone calling my name. Uh-oh.
That's never a good one.
Ruh-roh. Ruh-roh, Raggy. It was a whisper, and it was repetitive until I woke up. Surprisingly, it wasn't aggressive. It felt like the person was trying to wake me up, didn't want to, but they had to. Now, I would like to preface this by saying that I didn't take any medication because I was so young. I also didn't tell my parents about this at the time. I remember opening my eyes and looking around the room, trying to find out who was calling my name. I looked to my left, and my siblings were all sleeping. I thought that it was possibly my father, but I could hear him snoring. I looked over at my door, and I saw a shadowy figure. I can see it to this day, and when I think back on it, it was a man around 6 feet tall. Funny enough, he was dressed very well. I think we know where this is going. With a fedora.
Yes, of course.
And a suit. Or at least that's what it looked like. He was very casually leaning against the doorway. And as soon as I looked at him, he stepped away, and I looked around the room because after he left, I got a really unsettling feeling. I was scared when he left. I turned on my side facing the closet, and then something told me to look up. In the corner of the ceiling next to the closet, there was another shadowy figure watching me. It was hunched in the corner, just sitting there and smiling at me. I love that. I could see its eyes and I could see its teeth. Its eyes were white with black irises, and its teeth were white and sharp. I stopped moving and just stared at it. This would go on for what felt like hours. I didn't want to leave because my younger siblings were sleeping and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it could or could not do. I wish that it was sleep paralysis, but I could move just fine. I could turn my head, I could sit up, and it was still there. Sometimes my anxiety would get the best of me, and I would have to run out of the room as quietly as I possibly could. Or my dad would wake up and tell me to get back into bed. When I would get the courage to go back into the room, I would feel guilty, but it would be gone. This went on for months. It could be that I was exhausted and I was seeing things, but I will never forget how that thing in the corner looked at me, how much malintent I felt, how much anxiety and fear it gave me. I haven't seen that well-dressed man ever again, but I've heard stories on here, I guess the podcast, and from other people about him. My experience seemed more positive than theirs. He never scared me. I have more stories about that house if you want to hear more. Thank you for reading this. Yeah, we want to hear more.
We always want to hear more. Absolutely. This is interesting because I don't think we've ever spoken of this before on this podcast, which is rare because we're always like, well, we brought this up before. But the classic corner demon.
Yes.
Corner demons.
Yes.
So fascinatingly enough, in certain belief structures, the way that demons get into your house are through corners.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The corner represents a place, an egress, where demonic forces can enter into a home. As a matter of fact, that is why many people believe that the circle is such a divine image, because there's no egress for a demon. So when you're trying to protect yourself, you draw a circle around yourself, so there's no corner in which the demon can latch onto. So that is really interesting because that's something that I hadn't really even thought of in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Is the concept of the corner being a place where shadow entities can dwell, and start. And I want to say that there's even belief that if you go into like a round room, it's very safe. Mm-hmm. That the roundness of a room can keep you from having, dark and sinister things enter. And of course, the classic watcher at the doorway.
Right.
And the fact that the watcher interfered, which is not, again, that's not a normal occurrence, is for the watcher to be waking you up. The idea of waking you up when there is a dark presence is because the dark presence will more than likely mess with you while you're asleep. And while you're awake, it has boundaries that it has to deal with. So waking you up may have prevented you from having an episode with this particular entity. Mm-hmm. I think that is a positive interaction with even because there are plenty of people who get into a series of conversations about shadow people and their specific different notions. And some people will put, I talk to them about watchers a lot of times. Well, watchers, while I speak of them as watchers being more literally viewing you, there is enough history or belief structure to go behind and say that watchers are a level of angel. The Gregory, I think. There is a level of angel that are watchers, and they are considered to be the source material for guardian angels that watch over us. So whenever you have an interaction that seems to be some kind of interference with malcontent spirits, something's intervening. Some you could call it divine intervention, but it's definitely something saying, hey, something's going down, pay attention. And if you're lucky enough to recognize it and to act upon it, then yeah, you've had quite an experience.
You know, it's funny because I actually have had a similar experience to that, so maybe it'll make you feel better. When I was growing up, I've told you guys a little bit about, how the spirits in my room and things like that were very protective over me, which isn't uncommon with spirits, especially with children. They feel this need to protect children because they are so pure and they are exuding energy and light, and especially a child like me, where I was just like a beacon of, like, come get me, ghosts and things like that, and didn't realize it. Yeah, my spirits in my room one time woke me up, but instead of, being like, wake up, like that one time I've told you about, it was more so they were like, don't turn around. I was a dumb child and curious, and I did turn around, and what I saw was this super tall, shadowy figure with completely whited out eyes. And I immediately rolled over and hid under my blanket because I was like, oh, this will protect me. And I asked my spirits in my room, I'm like, make it go away. And then immediately I felt the energy just kind of push back. But it was also standing in the corner. So I wonder if you had a similar experience with a similar type of entity, because like Chris was saying, what I've always chalked it up to being is that it was one of those low energy shadow people, because there's different levels of shadow people. There's low energy ones that are malevolent, that are trying to elicit fear out of you solely so that they can gain more of that energy, they can still exist, versus shadow people who are just losing their form because nobody remembers them anymore. So there's a spectrum to it, but I always just assumed it was one of the darker, malevolent shadow people, and I have a feeling that's kind of what you were encountering, something that was low parasitic energy that was just trying to elicit that reaction out of you.
Especially shadow figures that can project features, like a smile or like eyes. That is not the remnants of a person fading away. That is, an act of intimidation.
Exactly.
One of my favorite images in cinema history, I'd say it's like top 5, is the shot that James Wan captured of, and you already know this, Maddie, of the demon in the corner when
Lipstick Man?
What's up? Oh no, it was
Insidious?
in Insidious.
Yeah,
it was in
Lipstick Man.
Insidious. Yeah, Lipstick Man. You're funny. Yeah, Lipstick Man, and
That's what it's called.
Is he really?
That's the name of that demon.
Lipstick Man.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
did
He's
not know
red
that.
because he put lipstick all over him.
Oh, I
When
thought
he
that
points.
Oh yeah, when he points. That literally, that is my favorite shot. I love that.
It's such a good shot.
It's such a good shot because they ask like, "What do you want?" And that's when the claw comes out and it points towards the boy, and I'm just like, "Oh, that's so good."
my mammal.
That was a great creation.
God,
Yeah.
just man.
My
James
mammal about
Wan.
lost it when that happened. I made her watch that with me, and
Yeah.
still to this day, I think she's scarred by that shot in
It
particular.
is a scarring shot.
Yeah.
It really is. But
Although
anyway.
the face
Crazy.
behind him in broad
Yeah.
daylight.
Yeah.
The
Oh, yeah.
broad daylight work for James. Kudos, James Wan.
He's just
for
so
bringing on
incredible.
the daylight scares. The little boy
Seriously.
in the middle of the
Yeah.
daylight. Yeah.
All right, and let's see. We got some new comments from the live stream. Alexandre Machado said, "Morning, y'all."
Morning.
Whitney Elaine said, "I love the space y'all create for sharing." Thank you. And Ashley Werner said, "That demon is so terrifying. Those movies scare me like no other."
There's a new one coming out.
Is
5,
Yeah.
Insidious
Oh
5.
yay!
Is it
Coming
5 or
out.
6? I think it's 6.
I don't think they count
Yeah, they don't count.
the key
right.
one.
Oh, they don't?
Oh,
I don't
Oh.
I don't think it's an Insidious movie
Oh, okay.
it's just like an offshoot, technically.
All right.
because it's a prequel
Yeah,
and it's separate.
that's true.
Let's jump into this story. Here we go. This is sent in by Jenna Helm.
Jenna Hill.
Yes. My Savannah apartment story is what it's titled.
Oh boy.
Hey guys, love the podcast and wish I had stumbled upon it sooner while I was living in Savannah. I'm a traveling nurse who completed a COVID ICU assignment at Memorial 7/2021 through 4/2022. Furnished short-term housing was hard to find around that time, so I ended up in a tiny duplex with another traveling nurse on East 53rd Street. My roommate had previously lived in the lower part of the duplex in the past and had heard stories from some SCAD students living upstairs that the house was haunted, so we had a little heads up prior to moving in. One week in, we were watching TV when we heard what sounded like a child running overhead in the attic towards us. Lord. The attic doesn't have flooring, so that wasn't a possibility. As we sat in the living room, shocked and staring at each other, the footsteps ran again across the attic away from us. We eventually went back to watching the movie when we started to hear loud booms from all around. I said the dorkiest thing you could imagine, saying, "Is that fireworks or gunshots?" We were both laughing as the booming continued because we thought it was fireworks. The next day, I ran into our downstairs neighbor and mentioned how annoying the fireworks were the night before, when she told me there had not been any fireworks that night nor loud booming noises of any origin. I was shocked and couldn't really speak, so I told her about the footsteps and blame haunted Savannah, LOL. It's true, just blame Savannah.
Yeah, it's an easy one to go with.
Ooh, this one has a photo, y'all.
Ooh.
After I pondered it later on, I remembered what my grandfather's antique musket sounded like when it fired, and it occurred to me that my roommate and I were probably hearing an exchange of musket fire. Wow. That happened on the land prior to the duplex being built. The footsteps continued to occur in the attic, and my dogs were even afraid. One last event happened before we happily moved out. My roommate worked nights, and I worked days, so I was home alone that night. Upon waking, I let the dogs out. It was raining so hard I stood in the doorway where they were in the yard. They came back, and I went back to my room to put scrubs on. Waiting for me was the wet, child-sized footprint on my bed.
No.
I attached a picture for you. Hope y'all are having a wonderful weekend, Jenna.
Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
And thank you for proving that even Ardsley Park is also haunted.
Yes.
Well, Ardsley Park was the wilds of Savannah at
wilds.
one point. You
The
know,
wilds.
that was kind of far out, and more than likely there were all kinds of small skirmishes, pushing back on even the indigenous people. There was probably all kinds of horror and terror that occurred in that region, in that area.
You know what's funny is, I want to say my nail tech, she lives actually on 53rd Street, and she has also told me about a child spirit in her house. So I wonder if you were living in the place where she is living now.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Very possible.
I'm gonna have to talk to her about
I have
that.
the full address, but
Yes.
we have so many listeners that they might want to
No,
go.
no, no.
Yeah,
They might wanna
need
go and-
no
I
need to
don't know.
publicize it, but that's okay. But yeah, it's not uncommon to see children's spirits everywhere in Savannah. So, you know, you never know what happened on that property before. The booms are interesting.
Booms are interesting because, too, Savannah has its history of gun violence that is not necessarily, musket fire.
We do?
All right.
I don't know how to
No
explain
way.
this, but there's been one or two incidences.
Oh, just a few incidents.
Lord.
But yeah, there's plenty to dive into there, and it's funny because Ardsley Park, and depending on how far east you're going, because you might not even be in Ardsley as much as the surrounding area. It's rows and rows of like that suburb kind of feel, but it's fascinating because the houses, it's not cookie cutter at all.
No, it is not.
So from house to house, it's all this different variety and different things. And so to imagine, a child's spirit trick-or-treating, just going from house to house and saying, oh, what's this place? Oh, what's that place? Oh, this is interesting. And yeah, children ghosts are unbound. So they can do all kinds of, get up to all kinds of mischief.
I don't like the wet footprint.
Wet footprint, very bothersome.
That's really, why would it be wet?
There's a number of reasons.
Well, she said that it was raining outside.
I know, but why would, I don't know.
There's a number.
Yeah.
There's so many
It
reasons.
could have gone out
Yes.
with the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe went out with the dogs, wanted to play. Oh, for sure.
Right.
That makes sense. for a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that in what Chris was saying is, yeah, child ghosts literally have no balance. They go everywhere. They oftentimes bounce around to different locations and things like that because they're still curious. They are still in the mindset that they are limitless
and some choose not to grow. So and children can be vicious and not realize it. They can be selfish and not, really think about the effect of their acts.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes when you're dealing with children, it could come off very demonic when in fact it's just mischief.
That would be my guess, just because there was no other indication that it was like actively trying to hurt you or cause
or even contact you, really.
Yeah, it was just kind of
just present.
existing.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, thank you guys so much for sending in your stories. We had quite a variety today.
Yeah, lovely.
We really did.
So this has been awesome. If you have a ghost story you would like to send us, you can send it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. Also, if you have questions that you would like us to answer on the show, we do our Q&A segment. So you can also send that to Ghostmail if you don't have TikTok. Otherwise, you can utilize the Q&A button on our TikTok, which is Haunted City Podcast. So with that, though, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.